In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, caught in a lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 246 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, good.
Just one time, I want you to say something else.
Okay.
I'm doing horrible. I hate you. I'm done with this. No, I don't want you to say any of that.
I'm out of here, man.
That's the thing about you, though, man, that I've always really liked is you're just kind of always in a good mood. You're upbeat.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe why you and I get along so well, because I am not always that way. They say opposites attract.
Yeah.
And so my emotions kind of can run the gamut for sure.
They do.
But you're pretty even keeled.
I try.
You try to be?
Yeah.
You should. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to live, man.
Yeah.
Wish I could rein mine in sometimes when people cut me off or something like that.
Doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
And probably would never happen.
No, I mean, by this age, I don't think I'm changing.
Probably just get worse as you get older.
It probably will. Get off of my lawn.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. We got some shout outs.
Okay.
Let's give those. We had Mara Yeager.
What's going on, Mara?
Katrinka Dotson jumped out at her highest level.
Well, thank you, Chatrinka.
Carrie Bevan.
What's going on, Carrie?
Claudia Margiata.
Maggiata.
Cody Cole.
Hey, Cody.
Ann Perkins.
Appreciate that, Ann.
L. Jasper.
What's going on, El?
Dana Venturi.
Hey, Venturi.
Kimba S.
Appreciate that, Kimba.
Carrie Sorensen.
Ooh, Kelly.
Miranda Humphrey jumped out at her highest level.
What's going on, Humphrey?
Kalisha Simpkins jumped out at her highest level.
Man, Simpkin in the house.
We had Karen.
What's going on, Karen?
Jamie Fogel.
Hey, Jamie.
Teresa Ann.
Hey, Teresa.
Kathy.
Appreciate that, Kathy.
Francesca Battaglioli jumped out at her highest level.
Battaglioli.
Boy, that I don't think that's right. And last but not least, we had Gabrielle Vance.
Hey, Gabrielle.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Allie G.
Boom, Allie G.
Yeah, been with us a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate all the new support, the continued support on Patreon. We also had some great PayPal donations from Christy Della Cerda,
Della Certa.
Jamie Lynn Hamby,
What's going on, Hamby?
Darlene Half,
Hey, Darlene.
Lauren Porter,
Hey, Lauren.
and Megan Hunt.
Oh, appreciate that, Megan.
So all of that is very much appreciated. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time Unsolved, we have an episode out on the Chicago Strangler.
Yeah, it was a good case.
It is, and I think you said it on our weekly Patreon episode that, this is a case that is not as well known as a lot of, infamous unsolved cases.
Right.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about possible victims in the number range of 50 plus here.
It's a lot of victims, man.
Yeah. So we'll get into all the details around that. Don't forget about CrimeCon. If you're wanting to go, make sure you get your tickets. From what I understand, they're going quick.
They're going really quick.
And so if you go to crimecon.com, use our promo code TCAT, you'll get 10% off your standard batch price.
TCAA. Wait, TCA.
TCATT.
Yeah, say that 10 times fast.
True crime all the time.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I'm ready.
We are talking about the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. This is a horrendous case. And some of the details are frankly unbelievable. It was on September 24th, 2006, that Cassie Jo Stoddart was found stabbed to death inside her aunt and uncle's home. The crime scene was a horrific sight, and the perpetrators turned out to be two pretty unlikely suspects, two of Cassie's high school friends. Cassie's murder case is often called the Scream Murder because these two guys, Torey Adamcik and Brian Draper, were inspired by the movie Scream. Now, they were also inspired by some serial killers, Bundy, Gacy, and others, but they wanted to make their own claim to fame, Gibbs, by turning Cassie's murder into their own kind of homemade horror film.
It's jacked up, man.
It is. And we're going to get into all of it.
We are.
Cassie Jo Stoddart was a 16-year-old girl from Pocatello, Idaho. Gibbs, everyone who has talked about Cassie has had nothing but positive things to say about her. Almost all the kids at Pocatello High School liked her. You know, she was getting good grades. She was on the right track to get into a top college and have a successful future. Christy Stoddart, her sister, told the show Your Worst Nightmare that Cassie was always determined to do well for herself. She was a kind person who was always there to reach out a helping hand. Cassie's uncle, Frank Contreras, told the Idaho State Journal, Cassie was a good girl. She didn't drink, she didn't use drugs, and she was a straight A student. She was responsible.
She was a model student.
And a model person.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, both together. It's sad. You know, when we talk about victims, you hear this a lot. Now, it's sad when anybody is murdered. Don't get me wrong, even if they had some negative things to say.
Right.
And I think there's also the factor of, okay, is anybody really going to say negative things? Well, we just had an episode recently.
We did.
Where somebody did say some negative things about the victim. We were shocked. Happened in another country. It was still shocking. But I like to think that, you know, these people, these victims that we talk about, especially the young ones, they are just really good people.
Yeah.
Haven't even really started their lives, but they all seem to be on the right track, right? They get good grades. They're thought of as nice people. They're well liked by their friends.
And I think some of them are just too trusting of others, right?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that sometimes when you peel back the layers of what exactly happened, we do find out that, you know, a lot of these people have a very trusting nature.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does lead to, you know, what ultimately happens to them. That's sad too, because you want people to be like that. You should be able to trust others. You should be able to lend a hand and not think that everybody that you meet is a killer.
I remember when my daughter was in that middle school age.
Her middle school age or your middle school age? Because there's probably about a 4 or 5 year difference there.
Ooh, that hurt, man. That hurt. No, yeah, her middle school age. I just remember she was like, anywhere we go, she was like super friendly. And I was like, hey.
Too friendly.
Yeah.
Too friendly. Dial it back.
Exactly.
And you hate to say that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a scary world out there. We all know that. Cassie was dating a boy named Matt Beckham. And he was a good guy. By all accounts, he was a very nice guy and a good boyfriend to Cassie. Her parents have said that they trusted him and they liked him a lot. Matt and Cassie were friends with two other 16-year-olds named Torey Adamcik and Brian Draper. Torey was passionate about filmmaking. Brian was outgoing and he played on the high school soccer team. They both seemed like normal teenage boys. The problem is, Gibbs, they were hiding a secret fascination with serial killers and especially the Columbine shooting. Now, the one thing I will say, Gibbs, is that, okay, a fascination with serial killers and even the Columbine shooting, I think on its own doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right? Do we have a fascination with killers and serial killers? Do people listening have a fascination? I would say the answer is probably yes.
Absolutely. I think they do.
Now, it doesn't mean they want to be like them. They don't want to pattern their actions after them. They're fascinated because they can't understand them. They're trying to, understand what makes these people tick and what causes them to do the things that they do. I think we're talking about a different type of fascination here with these two boys.
Yeah, I think listeners aren't idolizing.
No, absolutely not. And neither are we. I mean, right? We're very careful not to glorify these people that we talk about. If anything, we kind of put them down sometimes because, they're pieces of what.
They are.
In most cases, I would say. Brian had a website with memorials to 3 of the victims of the Columbine shooting. His website was titled "You Will Be Missed." Okay, that seems like a good thing, right? Develop a website, put it out there, memorialize the victims, and I'm saying, hey, you will be missed.
It is nice until you scroll down to the bottom of his webpage because he had more victims to come.
Yeah, at the bottom of the page, more victims to come. Okay, now that's creepy. It's not known if anyone knew about this website or if they did, if anyone reported it as a threat. I think today, for sure, we would look at that as a sign that, okay, something's going on here.
Yeah.
That would be viewed as a threat. Absolutely, I think, in today's culture.
I think there'd be some investigation going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian and Torey's biggest secret was that they were planning a murder of their own. And they wanted to film the entire process as part of, what they were thinking would be this type of real life horror movie. Now, as you can imagine, these boys were very secretive about their plans, right? You can't go around telling your mom and dad, you can't be sitting at the dinner table over pork chops and mashed potatoes saying, okay, here's my plan. What do you think? Because that's not going to go over well in most families.
No, I think somebody at the dinner table will be like, excuse me, boys. I don't think so.
We need to call somebody right away.
Yeah.
Really, only Torey and Brian knew the full extent of what they were going to do one day. Their 18-year-old friend, Joe Lucero, helped them purchase knives from a pawn shop. On August 31st, 2006, Joe received a phone call from Torey asking if he would buy some knives from them. Okay, these are two 16-year-olds. They can't just walk into a pawn shop. Heck, they can't even walk into a Cabela's, right, and buy a knife. I think you have to be 18 years old pretty much anywhere to buy a knife these days.
I made my own.
Back in the day?
Yeah.
That would not surprise me. You and I talk a lot about knives. It's something that we're kind of into. We collect knives. We have a lot of knives. You know me, I collect a lot of things.
You do.
So Torey and Joe went to a local pawn shop to buy knives. Brian provided the money, $40. And for that $40, Torey got 1 knife and Brian got 3. Obviously your money goes a long way at a pawn shop for a lot of things. So let's shift focus back to Cassie, right? Like most 16-year-olds, she really wanted a car. And so she was looking for ways to make money so that she could buy herself one. When Allison and Frank Contreras, her aunt and uncle, offered to pay her to house sit while they went on vacation, that seemed like the perfect opportunity to make some money.
Easy money.
Easy money. And I know a lot of kids that do that. My daughter's boyfriend has done that for a number of years. He has like a list of people and they know if they're going on vacation, okay, we're going to call him. He'll make sure the pets are taken care of, the trash is taken out, whatever it is.
Yeah, but strangely, he said no to my requests.
Yeah, I don't think he was ready for that.
Okay.
Yeah. He's pretty experienced. I don't think he was ready for Chateau Gibson.
Yeah, he just said, no, thank you, and disconnected.
Yeah, which I applaud him for. But I think I've said it before, Gibbs. I admire kids, 14, 15, 16, however old, looking for ways to make their own money.
Absolutely.
Whether back in the day it was having a paper route. That was a big deal. You had to get up early and, fold the papers and do all that. Ride your bike around town, throwing papers on people's porches, whatever it is. I really have a lot of admiration for kids who want to make their own money. I think we have probably less and less of those kids now than we did in years past.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think it's dwindled.
On Friday, September 22nd, 2006, at 5:30 p.m., Cassie's mother dropped her off at her aunt and uncle's house. They lived in the town of Chubbuck. That's what I'm calling it. I know I'm going to get emails saying that I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it was about 15 minutes away from Cassie's home. Her mother planned to pick her up on Sunday morning when her aunt and uncle returned from vacation. So she was going to be there the entire time, which is somewhat normal, I think, in a house sitting. Sometimes people leave, they just come back to feed the pets and let them out, but different situations. One of the problems, Gibbs, is Cassie had no car. We just talked about it.
Yeah, so she's going to be stuck there.
Right, unless, her mom or somebody was going to come pick her up and take her back and forth, or she called a friend for a ride. She had no way to really leave. And her aunt and uncle lived in a pretty remote area. I guess their nearest neighbor was about a half a mile away.
Yeah, so as a friend or a parent, you're probably like, do they really want to make that drive out there again and again if she needed something? I think some people would, but I'd be like, you sure you need me to come out there?
Are you sure? So you're telling me you wouldn't drive 15 minutes to go pick up your kids and drop them off and take them back?
No, it costs too much gas money.
Oh, I forgot. Who am I talking to?
Yeah.
Why would I even ask that question? So we have to talk about this house, right? Set at pretty remote area. It was also an older home. And like a lot of older homes, it made lots of noises. It had creaky floorboards. It's thought by many people that Cassie was probably a little nervous about being there alone. I don't know how many different people she relayed that to, if that's a fact or that's just an assumption that many people have made.
Well, it would be a little freaky, if you staying in a home like that and you're out in kind of rural area. I mean, every time you hear a noise, you're probably thinking, who's that? What
is that?
Yeah.
Well, and let's not forget, she's only 16 years old, but she wanted the money. I think at the same time, like a lot of kids, she wanted to show her mom that she was mature, that she was responsible, and that she could handle this on her own.
Well, yeah, she made that commitment to do it. Her aunt and uncle's gone, so if she doesn't do it,
letting them down.
Yeah.
And maybe in her mind feeling like she let herself down and is looking bad in the eyes of others. I get that. Matt was dropped off to see Cassie about an hour later. And Cassie's aunt and uncle had given her permission to have Matt over. And both of their parents were fine with them hanging out at the house unsupervised. Again, we talked about the fact that these were both good kids. And I think, Gibbs, they had built up an extreme amount of trust with their parents. That's what happens when you do the right thing consistently. You build up that credit in the trust department. At 8:30 p.m., Torey, Adamcik, and Draper showed up to the house. Matt had invited them over and told them that Cassie was having a party. When they got there, they saw, okay, no party. Now, Cassie was angry that Matt invited them. Her aunt told her specifically that Matt was the only person she was allowed to have at the house. And, Gibbs, like we've said, Kathy was a good girl. She wasn't a rule breaker. But at the same time, she also wasn't a rude person. So, she didn't want to confront these boys and say, you can't be here, or, say something to try to send them away.
Because of that, Torey and Brian stayed at the house for about 2 hours.
Yeah, at some point, Brian told Cassie and Matt that he wanted to leave because he didn't like the movie they were watching and he wanted to go to the movie theater and see something else. Torey and Brian left around 10:30 p.m.
Yeah, but before they left, that Brian was a little sneaky guy because he went downstairs and he unlocked the back door to the house.
Yeah, I think sneaky might be a euphemism here, right? There is definitely some bad intentions involved.
For sure.
So Torey and Brian had left. Cassie and Matt were alone in the house. They finished their movie. But then just after 10:30 p.m., all of a sudden, Gibbs, all of the lights in the house went out. Okay, you're in a home that's not your own. Now, it's your aunt and uncles. You're probably somewhat familiar with it, but still, you're in a remote area. The closest neighbor is about a half a mile away. That's a scary proposition. I think even when your boyfriend is there with you, Cassie was scared, and she asked Matt to go check the circuit breaker in the basement. But just before he went down, the lights came back on. And then around 11 p.m., Matt's mom came to pick him up. I think the problem for Cassie was this was just about, what, Gibbs, 30 minutes after this whole light thing.
Right.
So she was still
on edge,
a little bit freaked out, a little scared. And she asked Matt to see if he could stay with her. He went outside and asked his mom, and she told him absolutely not.
Probably wanted a little chaperoning going on if that was going to happen.
Yeah, I get it, right? 16-year-olds, most parents really don't want them staying overnight by themselves. So she told him no way, but he did say that if Cassie was scared, she could spend the night at their house and she would drop her back off in the morning. So obviously she was being very nice. It wasn't because she didn't like Cassie. It was probably more so because, everybody knows what happens when, or what can happen when boyfriend and girlfriend get together. They're allowed to stay by themselves at night. Okay. Parents watch out for that.
Yeah, they do.
Not always successfully. They try to.
They try. So obviously Matt relayed that information to Cassie.
Yeah, she wasn't happy. She was still scared. She wanted to go with Matt, but ultimately decided not to. She figured it would be best if she stayed at the house. I think Gibbs, she was looking at it from a responsibility standpoint.
Yeah.
Right? It was her responsibility to watch the house. She was getting paid to stay there, not at Matt's house. So Matt left her just after 11 p.m. All right, Gibbs, let's talk about GoodRx for a minute. Getting the care you need to stay healthy shouldn't be hard or expensive. Everyone should be able to afford their medication. So check out GoodRx. They help me find the lowest price on my prescriptions every time. With GoodRx, you can instantly compare prices for your prescription at every pharmacy in your neighborhood and save up to 80%. 80%. GoodRx is free and easy to use, and many times it's often cheaper than using your insurance copay or Medicare. With GoodRx, you can find discounts for your prescriptions at over 70,000 pharmacies like CVS, Kroger, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Vons, Walmart, and more. GoodRx is the #1 most downloaded medical app, and millions of Americans use GoodRx to get affordable health care every month. Ever since I learned about it, I'm using it every time now. I even got my mother-in-law to use it on her phone. She was blown away by how much money she was able to save just by shopping around using the information on GoodRx. So start saving up to 80% on your prescriptions today. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That is goodrx.com/TCAT. goodrx.com/TCAT. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used instead of insurance. In 2020, GoodRx users received an average savings of over 70% of retail prices. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. On his way home, Matt called Torey and told him that he was headed home for the night. Innocent, right? This is an innocent phone call.
Right.
The problem is, and there's no way that Matt could have known this, but basically what he did was give these two boys the signal.
Yeah, setting it up.
That Cassie was all alone in the home. They were clear to carry out their plans. Matt later recalled that Torey was whispering quietly and said he was at the movies. Well, it turns out he wasn't. In reality, he was outside of the house where Cassie was staying, just waiting to go back inside.
Yeah.
Now, Cassie thought she was safely locked inside the house, right? She probably went around, made sure all the doors were locked. The problem is she didn't know that before he left, Brian had unlocked the back door leading to the basement. Sometime after 11 p.m., the lights went out again. So now you're talking about real fear. She was scared before.
Oh, sure.
And that was when Matt was there. Now Matt's gone. She had to have been almost frozen.
Yeah.
With fear.
And there's no way she was going to check out the basement.
No. I mean, anybody that's seen a scary movie knows don't go into the basement. Now, the accounts given later by Torey and Brian differ a little bit on exactly what happened, but the basic facts are the same. Torey and Brian continued to turn the lights on and off, scaring Cassie. What they were trying to do, Gibbs, is get her to come downstairs to the basement to check out the circuit breaker, but she never did. So they ended up coming upstairs wearing masks and dark clothing. At some point, Cassie heard their footsteps and yelled, "Who's there?" The boys snuck up on her and they both stabbed her multiple times. She tried to fight them off, but she couldn't, right? They overpowered her and they killed her. Afterwards, they fled the scene and they took the clothes and the murder weapon with them. But they left Cassie's body in the house. Gibbs, the very next day, Matt spent the day with Torey, not knowing that he had just murdered his girlfriend. So, I mean, I think you got to take a step back here, right? These are 16-year-old boys.
Yeah.
You're able to spend the day with your friend who happened to be the boyfriend of a young girl that you just murdered. What does that say about this kid? He wasn't shaking in his boots, right? He wasn't sitting in his basement crying over what he had just done.
Just cold and callous.
And basically acting as though it was any other day. Hey, let's hang out like we always do. On Sunday, September 24th, Cassie's family came back to the house. It was her 13-year-old cousin, Kelsey, who ran in ahead of her parents and found Cassie's body laying on the living room floor.
Well, for a 13-year-old to come in and see that had to be shocking.
Yeah. Well, number one, Gibbs, I think to find a dead body, to see a dead body, that would shock anyone. And, you know, you're going to be working through a lot of things for a number of years, but to find your cousin who's only 3 years older, I bet you they were pretty close. Yeah, that must have been extremely tough for her. And the aunt and uncle as well.
Well, and it's been 2 days too.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, it's not like they found her within a couple of hours of her being killed. It was essentially, you know, almost 2 days later. They immediately called the police. Christy Stoddart was at work when her uncle came in during her shift. He told her there had been a family emergency. Someone stabbed Cassie and she was dead. Christy didn't believe it until she went to the house and saw the crime scene. Cassie's mom didn't find out that she was dead until she arrived to pick up her daughter. So you talk about shocking, right? This whole family is in shock. They have no idea what happened. They only know that Cassie's dead.
Yeah. And when we say she was stabbed, it wasn't just 1 or 2 times by these kids.
No, it turned out that she was stabbed over 30 times. And it was stated that 12 of those wounds were fatal. They determined that she was stabbed with 2 different knives, which indicated to police that 2 different people were involved in her murder, which I think is a safe assumption. Now, could you have one person who has 2 knives and uses them both? Yeah, you could.
Well, sure you could.
But I think the natural assumption, whether it's determining 2 different knives were used or 2 different caliber of bullets were used, that assumption is going to be that there were multiple people involved.
Yeah. Well, Cassie's mom knew that Matt was one of the people that saw her last. because she gave permission for Matt to come over and stay there with her.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think naturally, right? Matt was going to be the first suspect. Like you said, police found out he was at the house. He was the closest person to Cassie. So a detective went to his house to talk to him. And this encounter, this interaction, Gibbs, has been described as it relates to Matt as him being emotionless, which, right away, detectives are going to be suspicious. Hey, we're talking to you. We just told you that your girlfriend was murdered. No emotion. But at the same time, they felt as though Matt was being truthful during their conversation. And then Matt told a detective that Torey and Brian were also at the house that night. Torey and Brian were interviewed separately. And I think initially police weren't real high on them as suspects in the murder. For one thing, I think it's hard for a lot of us to think that, a 16-year-old boy is capable of this type of violence.
Yeah. Could they plan something like this?
Carry it out. Now, we know boys fight, right?
Sure.
You and I back in the day probably got in our share of scrapes.
Oh, yeah.
I know I did. Not always on the winning side, unfortunately. I know you were.
Of course.
Because you were a master in all kinds of different disciplines. But, in all seriousness, when you think about 15, 16-year-olds, you don't think about them sitting around planning, masterminding, this type of heinous murder. Now, we know it's possible because we've talked about a bunch of them, but I think right off the bat, it's just not something that you would immediately go to.
No.
The police are going to get there. We know that.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't think it took them all that long. Gibbs, I think they changed their minds about Torey and Brian after the first interview. So the first story that the boys told was that they went to the house for a party. When they got there, they found out that there was no party. So they left and they went to the movies. The problem they ran into was that they couldn't tell the detective the name of the movie they saw, who was in it, or even the basic plot of the movie. So sounds very much like you when you bring up some movie that you all of a sudden can't remember a single detail about.
Yeah, but that's me.
That is you. And you're not trying to cover your tracks for a murder.
No.
So, I mean, you think about this, again, they're 16 years old. How smart are they? How cunning are they? Do they not think that when they are giving their alibi to police that, detectives might dig in a little further? They might ask some probing questions.
Well, look, I'm no movie expert.
That is for sure.
And that's where I differ from these boys.
Yeah, because at one point, they both called themselves movie experts. So that's very unusual for somebody to say that they're a movie buff. And let's go further. I'm a movie expert.
Yeah.
But I just saw a movie a few days ago and I can't tell you anything about it.
The main character, the plot, nothing? Really?
That's what I always say about you when you start down a path and then can't tell me a single thing about it.
I know.
And somehow I know what the movie is anyway.
So I'd have to bring you in. I'd be like, hey, I need to make a phone call. They're like, oh, great. He wants his attorney. I'm like, oh, no. I just need Fergie
to tell me what movie I saw.
Because he'll remember the movie. As I explain it to you, he'll get it.
Matt came into the police station to take a polygraph. He passed and he was cleared as a suspect. So really after that, police zeroed in on Torey and Brian, really as their two main suspects. They were interviewed a second time, a third time, and every time their story changed a little bit. Okay, that's not good either. When you're talking to police, they're checking for that, right? That's why you go through a bunch of different interviews,
sure.
Sometimes asked the exact same question multiple times. They want to see if your answer the third time is the same as it was the first time.
It's kind of like a spouse questioning another spouse when they don't believe they're being told the truth.
Yeah, they might wait a day, a couple of days, ask you again. wait a couple more days, ask you again, just to see if they're getting the same answer.
Yeah. See if you slip up or a aha moment.
Some spouses can be amateur detectives, like I'm sure a lot of our audience can be as well.
Sure.
Some people take pride in that amateur detective label for good reason. But like I said, their stories changed. In Brian's second interview, he told the officer that they were actually out burglarizing cars, and that the reason he said they were at the movies was to cover that up. And I know, Gibbs, we've talked about this before. I get the reasoning behind it, because obviously burglarizing a car is not as bad as murder.
Sure.
But this is a very common tactic used by, a lot of people once they've been kind of not caught, but like they feel trapped.
Yeah.
So they will admit to something they deem to be lesser in severity, hoping, I guess, that they'll get slapped on the wrist for that, but the police won't continue to look at them as a suspect in the murder. I don't know how many times it works, but I guess you got to try something. But officers weren't buying the story. After this second interview, detectives received permission from Brian and his parents to search his bedroom. Inside his bedroom, they found a knife. Brian said the knife belonged to one of his friends, and he had no idea why it was in his bedroom.
Likely story,
but also, I'm thinking there's no plan here, right? This is not, I was thinking about comparing this to a movie, and in my head I had, I think it's called Murder by Numbers. Have you ever seen that one? I think that's the one with the young Ryan Gosling, where these two kids are kind of pitted up against
Sandra Bullock.
Yeah. I think that's the name of it, but the movie I'm talking about.
Michael Pitt's in it as well.
Who?
Michael Pitt.
Yes.
Yeah.
He played in Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah.
And they're trying to use all this forensic knowledge and trying to get over, commit the perfect murder. There's none of that here. I mean, it seems very fly by the seat of our pants type thing, where you don't have an alibi.
Yeah.
You use an alibi that you can't back up. You just leave a knife laying in your bedroom. Have no idea how it got there.
Yeah, I never understand when people do that. I'm glad they do it, because, that's the way that, some people get caught.
Yeah, we don't want people to get away with anything.
But it makes you shake your head, like, why wouldn't you have gotten rid of that? If it is the knife that was used, why would you have kept that?
Torey and Brian were arrested on September 27, 2006. They were charged as adults and held on $1 million bond. According to Torey's second interview, Brian stabbed Cassie first. She screamed loudly. Brian told Torey that he had to come and finish it. So Torey told the detective, I had to do it. Why? Because your buddy told you to, and you didn't want to look like a punk in his eyes, or
right,
like you chickened out, or, he's already admitted that he did it. It's just the reasoning behind it. It's so strange.
Yeah. What you had to do was stop, call 911 and get her help, but no.
Now, in Brian's third interview, he said he was in the house, but he never stabbed Cassie. He thought the whole thing was just a prank. He admitted that they unlocked the door, but they were just planning to scare her. But it was Torey who took things too far, and Torey threatened to kill him if he said anything. He confessed that they buried the evidence in Black Rock Canyon. And Brian even took the police to the location, where they uncovered some black clothing, 3 knives, 2 masks, and a videotape.
So the boys are up against each other.
Which often happens, right? When 2 people commit a crime, it's very natural for them to turn on each other, because nobody wants to take the blame, right? You want to put the blame on someone else and minimize your role in the whole thing. But the videotape is important here, because neither of the boys had ever mentioned a video. So police uncover this, and Gibbs, they had to be worried about what they were going to see on this video when they watched it, It had to be bad because why would somebody hide it?
Right.
Along with all of the other tools that they used to commit the murder. A detective told the show Your Worst Nightmare, you could have heard a pin drop in the room when the tape began. And Gibbs, the tape was as horrifying as they were afraid it would be. In the days before and after Cassie's murder, the boys filmed everything. They filmed their entire plot to kill her, and they filmed the moments after her death. They recorded videos on September 21st, 22nd, and the 23rd. In total, there was about 31 minutes of video of them planning and even confessing to the murder. So I do want to read some excerpts of this video with a little warning that there is some pretty vulgar language. You got 16-year-old boys, you're going to have that. But I think it's important to read it as it was said. In one of the earliest video clips, Brian said, I feel like I want to kill somebody. I know that's not normal, but what the hell? Torey responded, I feel like we need to break away from normal life. And to me, this is important, Gibbs. You are getting an inside glimpse into what these kids are thinking, feeling in the moments, days before the murder, after the murder.
And as their parents, you have to be sick to your stomach.
Oh my gosh.
When you watch this.
Yeah, I don't often think about that. It's a good point. What do parents think when they have a child who kills someone? That's got to be horrific. Then you've got this videotape that comes out that, really kind of puts a spotlight on just how callous and depraved, these two kids were. Because, throughout the video, they laugh about killing someone. They even mention that they've tried to kill someone 8 or 9 times. But the people that they targeted had never been alone. Or if they were alone, their parents showed up before these kids could carry out what they wanted to do. At one point, Torey said to Brian, we're not going to get caught. Brian said, we're going to make history. We're going to be just like Scream, except in real life terms. This is where the Scream murder comes in because he specifically references the movie. And I guess the boys talked about the Scream movie a lot. They also compared themselves to Ted Bundy, the Hillside Strangler, and the Zodiac Killer. Okay, not people you really want to emulate.
Yeah, these are the wrong people to idolize for sure.
Torey even said at one point, those people were mere amateurs compared to what we are going to be. So, if you're calling Ted Bundy an amateur killer and your thought is you're going to surpass him.
Scary.
Yeah, because Ted Bundy, Hillside Strangler, they had a body count.
Yeah.
And so to me, that means you're not planning on killing one person. If you're going to surpass these infamous killers, you're planning on killing multiple individuals. Once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation, same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like they're 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. You know, my wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cash back really adds up. Now, initially, the boys decided they were going to break into Cassie's home and scare her. But they said that plan changed just a few hours later. On September 21st at 8:36 p.m., Torey and Brian decided that Cassie was going to be their victim, even if she was their friend. They didn't care. They made that decision, I think in part, Gibbs, because they had just found out that she was going to be house sitting alone. Brian said on the tape, as sad as it may be, she's our friend, but you know what? We all have to make sacrifices. Our first victim is going to be Cassie Stoddart. We'll find out if she has friends over, if she's going to be alone in a big dark house out in the middle of nowhere. How perfect can you get? Gibbs, Torey said, I'm horny just thinking about it.
These kids are messed up.
Sexually excited over the fact that they're about ready to kill their friend. Brian said, hell yeah. So we're going to fucking kill her and her friends, and we're going to keep moving on. I heard some news about a girl. She's going to be home alone from 6 to 7. So we might kill her and drive over to Cassie's thing, scare the shit out of them, and kill them one by fucking one. Hell yeah. Now, I know a lot of 16-year-old boys talk like this, right? I play Xbox. I hear them talking all the time. Not about killing people. Just they use a lot of profanity.
Sure.
They think that's cool. All right, I get it. You and I probably cussed a lot more when we were younger too. We don't as much anymore. But when you're doing it in the context of talking about, killing multiple people, and let's not forget, Cassie was their friend. They considered her a friend. She considered them friends. It is just something. On one part of the tape, Brian said, I'm sorry to Cassie's family, but she had to be the one.
It's a bizarre thing to say.
Why did she have to be the one?
And you think the family really wants to hear that sorry? I'm sorry, family.
No, they're not putting it. They wouldn't put any stock into that. And we're going to talk more about the tape in just a second. But you think about this tape. You and I often talk about evidence and good evidence and slam dunk type evidence. I don't know what else you're going to get here. You've got these kids laying out pretty much everything, what they're planning to do. And as we're going to find out, what they did, right? Talking about it after the fact. On the 22nd, the boys filmed themselves at school. They recorded a video of Cassie at her locker. They sat at a table openly talking about killing people. But I guess, Gibbs, no one overheard this conversation, or at the very least, no one reported it.
So that was the day of the murder.
Yeah, during the day when they were at school, it seems like by that point, they'd already made up their mind, right? They were going to kill someone. They even said they had either attempted it or started the process 8 or 9 different times, got foiled, whatever. At 9:53 p.m., the boys recorded a short video talking about how they had unlocked the back door to the house where Cassie was house sitting. At 11:30 p.m., the boys recorded themselves after they killed Cassie. On this part of the tape, Brian said, I just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke. Torey said, I'm shaking. I stabbed her in the throat. Brian replied, and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie. That felt like it wasn't even real. I mean, it went by so fast. Torey told him to shut the fuck up and said, we got to get our act straight. And Brian said, it's okay. We'll just buy movie tickets now. So obviously they had the movie idea ahead of time as a cover. As we know, Gibbs, it didn't go well because they didn't get the details right. Now, the boys didn't film themselves killing Cassie, and they didn't record any footage of her body.
But as disturbing as this tape is, police have to be, I don't want to use the word ecstatic, but they have to be feeling good because this is really strong evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, before this tape was found, you had one of them saying, I didn't stab her.
And one of them pinning it on the other.
Yeah. And on this video, you got them both, I want to say they're like high-fiving each other, but they're pretty
close to it.
Yeah.
But at the very least, they're admitting everything that they did. Now, speaking of the video, obviously Cassie's family was heartbroken, but they had to have been, I hate to use the word glad, but they had to have been, I don't know what else to use, Gibbs, glad that these boys didn't tape the murder, didn't tape her body, didn't record that part so that they didn't have to see that.
It'd be rough to see your child go through that.
Actually being murdered.
Yeah.
Or seeing her dead body,
yeah,
just after the murder.
You couldn't be there to protect her.
Bad enough knowing it happened. Even worse, I think, seeing it actually happen. On September 28th, Brian confessed that he did stab Cassie, but he said it was only because Torey made him. He said Torey told him to stab Cassie to make sure she was dead. He also revealed that they created a hit list, including Matt Beckham, but they didn't kill him because he didn't stay at the house.
Well, sure didn't sound like Torey made him do anything in that video.
No, I mean, again, I think they're still trying to play it wasn't me, it was him, or at the very least, I'm trying to minimize my role.
Right.
It's pretty tough to do that, though. When you have this videotape that kind of lays it all out. I mean, they each said after the murder what they had done, and they were excited about it. How are you going to beat that in court? And I mentioned that after they were arrested, they each got $1 million bond. Well, once police got this video, those bonds were revoked.
As they should have been.
Cassie's family and the entire community experienced extreme shock and grief. Her classmates painted her portrait on a boulder on the property of the school as a memorial to her. All of the football players wore her initials on an armband, and they had a moment of silence for her during games. Brian Draper's trial began on April 11th, 2007. And, this was a very high-profile case. Gibbs police had to use some extreme security measures. Everyone had to pass through metal detectors, and the jury was sequestered and monitored around the clock. They also had extra security for Brian's transport to and from prison.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few people who wanted both Brian and Torey taken care of.
Yeah, I'm sure there were people in the community that at least thought about it. However, seriously, that maybe they should take the law into their own hands and not wait for a jury to decide what should happen to them.
Yeah, I know as parents, we've talked about it before. If that was our kid, what would we do in that situation? And, I know I've said, and I think you have too, we would jump over whatever was keeping us from getting to that kid.
It would be hard not to.
Yeah.
It would be hard not to. I'm not saying I would hurt somebody, but it would be hard not to want to go after the person that I knew murdered my child.
Yeah, I would hurt somebody.
I think you probably would.
I'd be okay going to jail for it.
Brian's attorney opposed the video being used as evidence, but his motion to suppress it was denied. I mean, you're going to have to try that, right? Because if that video is allowed to be entered into evidence, it's game over for your client. I mean, there's just no way around it. How is a jury going to view that videotape and not find these guys guilty? At both Brian and Torey's trials, The prosecution showed graphic photos of Cassie's body. I'm sure that, along with the videos, helped sway the jury in their favor. The prosecution also played videotapes of Brian's interviews, kind of showing how he, had lied from one interview to the next.
You almost want to like play a little bit of that interview.
Play a little bit of the other tape. Yep. So Brian's attorney's tactic was to basically use the statement that Brian had made, that Torey threatened to kill him if he talked to the police. So he argued that this whole thing was Torey's idea. But again, Gibbs, with the videotape, I just don't see how a jury would buy that argument. This one didn't. They convicted Brian of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder on April 17th, 2007.
Pretty quick. 6 days.
Yeah, it didn't take long, but it's quite a bit of compelling evidence, right? You have the videotape. They were led to the site where, the items used in the murder were dumped. Torey Adamcik's trial began May 31st, 2007. His lawyer argued that the videotape shows that Brian killed Cassie, not Torey. So he basically did the exact same thing that Brian's attorney did. He just tried to blame it all on Brian. He said Brian was a troubled teen, fascinated by Columbine. According to the Times News, Torey's attorney said, "The state will tell you Brian Draper says we just killed Stoddart. It does not say we. It says I killed Cassie." But what I found interesting, Gibbs, was that Torey's lawyer did not try to suppress the video. He actually used the video to try to show the jury that Brian acted alone. He also said that DNA on a t-shirt and a glove proved that Brian acted alone. He said, "You will see that he is obsessed with Columbine. You're going to hear that he had writings fantasizing about school shootings. All of the evidence is consistent with one murderer, and they already caught him. His name is Brian Lee Draper." And again, I know I've said it before, Giz, but what else is this guy going to do? And I think Torey's attorney had the advantage of the fact that Brian had already been convicted. So I'm sure he tried to use that, right? They already convicted this guy. They already put him away. He's the one who did it.
Right.
Set my guy free.
But even with that advantage, it's not going to help their case.
No, there's no way.
Get that video out there. It's just so...
Yeah, Torey was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder on June 8th, 2007. So again, fairly quick. Neither one of these trials lasted more than, about 7-8 days. On August 24th, Torey and Brian were sentenced to life in prison. They were both sentenced to a 30-year fixed sentence for murder and an indeterminate life sentence for the conspiracy charge. The judge said that their ultimate motive was fame. They wanted to be famous like other serial killers and kill as many people as they could before they were caught. And they wanted to both know how it felt to actually kill someone. The judge rejected the arguments that only one boy was responsible. He said they both knew what they were doing. And again, I don't know how anybody would view the tape or even look at a transcript and not understand that. Torey made a motion to seek a more lenient sentence, but it was denied on March 10th, 2008. His attorney argued that he had neurocognitive deficits in his prefrontal lobe, which led to impaired judgment. He said he was a boy with absolutely no hope. Every day, the routine would be the same until he dies. Okay, I don't know if any of that is true. I don't know if he's throwing, what at the wall and seeing what sticks. I never saw this as a diagnosis. I never saw where a doctor testified. Maybe they did and I just missed it.
I don't think Cassie's grandfather thought the punishment was enough. He told the Spokesman Review, "So what if Torey's in a tiny little room? My granddaughter will never leave her casket." That's pretty valid.
Yeah, I think that's a normal reaction from the family member of a murdered victim. there's not going to be any sympathy for the fact that, this kid's got to spend however much of his life sitting in a 8x8 cell or 8x6 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's not going to bring my granddaughter back to me.
I mean, they planned this murder by evidence of their video. Wasn't a spur of the moment thing. Wasn't like we walked in, we didn't know that we were going to do it, and it just happened. No, it was planned.
Oh yeah, it was calculated. They'd been thinking about it for some time. And not only that, Gibbs, but they had plans beyond this. And I think that scared a lot of people as well. Cassie's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the school district on claims of negligence. They said that the administration should have known that Torey and Brian were threats to students at the school. The judge threw out their case in September 2010. And the Idaho Supreme Court ruled that the school district was not negligent because the actions were not foreseeable. And I get that. Now, if somebody had overheard them talking in the lunchroom and they had brought that to the attention of a school administrator,
sure,
and that person did nothing, then I think you're talking about a different situation.
I agree.
But if the school had no knowledge of it, it's kind of hard to say that they were negligent or that they did anything wrong. Brian appealed to the Supreme Court of Idaho, and that appeal was decided on September 13th, 2011. His conviction was upheld. In September 2013, Torey sought post-conviction relief based on ineffective assistance of counsel and on the grounds of cruel and unusual punishment.
Which we hear a lot of.
We do. The district court denied his claims, so his attorneys appealed again. The Idaho Supreme Court ruled that Torey failed to prove ineffective assistance of counsel. They also ruled that the court appropriately considered his age at sentencing. A life sentence for a minor under these conditions did not violate the Eighth Amendment. And on December 28th, 2017, the Idaho Supreme Court upheld the conviction of Torey Adamcik. Torey's mother, Shannon, wrote a book about the case titled The Guilty Innocent. Yeah, but she basically wrote this book about everything from her perspective. She told the Times News, "It's important to me that people who want to know what happened have the opportunity to know what happened." Now, she insisted that Torey didn't participate in stabbing Cassie, but she doesn't deny his involvement in the conspiracy to kill her. She says that the physical evidence of stabbing points only to Brian, which I think is a point that Torey's attorney tried to make at trial. She doesn't think her son is completely innocent. He did lie to the police. He did drive them to the crime scene, and he helped bury evidence. But she said Torey was just acting on his desire to make a horror movie. It was Brian Draper who came up with the plot to kill Cassie. They talked about murder because it gave them thrills. But Torey was only pretending, and he wasn't really going to hurt anyone.
So he was only pretending on the tape. What he said?
That he stabbed Cassie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, we just talked about it earlier, Gibbs, right? How does a parent react when their child murders someone? I think it's going to be tough to believe in your heart that your child really did this. Now, I think most people disagree with Shannon. They think she's biased, obviously, because she's Torey's mother. Cassie's family experienced extreme depression after her death. Her aunt lost her job. Her cousin tried to take her own life. We talked about it, Gibbs. What's it like for a 13-year-old girl to discover the dead body of her 16-year-old cousin?
Yeah. How difficult would that be? And then to continue to live in that house for however long they did, knowing that that's where she died.
Yeah, that's true. We don't know how long they lived there. Frank Contreras left his family after he struggled with alcoholism. He felt like he couldn't love his family anymore. I think the Contreras family thought that they were living in their dream home. But obviously, after this happened, it turned into a nightmare. They bought the home in 2005. They'd only been living there about a year when the murder happened. They struggled to sell the house even at a discounted price. Torey and Brian are both 31 years old and are both incarcerated at Idaho State Correctional Institution. Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, I think it's very difficult for people to believe that no one else noticed that these two boys were planning a gruesome murder. They had talked about it openly, maybe not specifically to people, but it doesn't seem as though they were trying to hide it all that much. If they're sitting at, let's say a lunch table talking about the fact that they're going to kill someone, there's no doubt they were obsessed with violent horror movies. Again, I don't want to put too much stock into that. I like horror movies. My kids love horror movies. We watch them together.
You guys do, yeah.
I never sit there thinking that these movies are going to influence my kids to go do something bad. I don't think that.
I think you're worried more about me influence, though.
I'm very worried about your influence. Now, what I do think should have been very worrisome is the fact that Brian was obsessed with the Columbine school shooting. We talked about the website that he had. It looked as though it was a good thing until you got to the bottom, and there will be more victims. Again, a little website. I don't know who else would have seen it.
Right.
If anybody had, I don't know how you take that as anything other than an ominous kind of premonition or a warning that, hey, something bad is about to happen. They talked openly about killing at school,
which is probably what led to that lawsuit. Or
yes, I'm sure it did. I'm sure that was probably the basis for it.
But like you said, if an administrator didn't hear that,
or they were not told about it, then really what could they have done, because they had no reason to do anything? It's a tough case, though. I mean, there's no way around that. You and I talk a lot about being parents. A lot of people listening right now are parents. I think as a parent, you're always trying to walk that line between giving your kids a little space, giving them a little freedom, but at the same time, kind of monitoring who they're hanging out with, what they're up to. It's a tough job, right? Being a parent.
Sure is.
You're not always going to be liked, because your kids aren't always going to like, the angle that you take. Most kids don't really like you prying into their life, right? But I mean, I think as a parent, you got to do some of that.
Sometimes you do.
I like to know who my children's friends are. I like to know what type of people they are.
Well, sure, because there's always those influences.
I think one big takeaway from this case, and it's a takeaway from a number of cases that we do involving kids, involving school, is that, kids have to know. And I think they know this today much more so than they did 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. They have to know that, you got to report people. If you overhear somebody talking about committing violent acts towards another person, you can't just blow that stuff off anymore. I'm not sure that you really should have ever done that, but I think today more than ever, you can't let that slide.
No. Best to alert somebody.
Yeah. And again, we've talked about it. It's tough if it's your friend, you don't want to lose that friendship, but do you really want to be the person that knew something was going to happen and didn't do what you could to stop it?
Yeah, because you're potentially saving lives, but also helping that friend out by not allowing them to do something that is going to ruin their lives and others forever.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. But that's it for our case on the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. Tough all the way around.
Sure is.
We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey guys, I am calling from Vancouver, BC. My name is Ashley. I just wanted to give a shout out to you guys that you guys are really, I love your guys' podcast. I started doing a podcast a few years ago, and I think you guys are fabulous at it. But I really wanted to actually give a suggestion if you guys could look into and do a podcast episode on the case that was from Calgary, Alberta. It happened about 5-6 years ago. It was of Douglas Garland. He had murdered he'd murdered some grandparents and their grandson. It's actually a horrific, one of Calgary's most horrific murders, and it was very traumatizing for the community, and that I remember it all too well, unfortunately. But I was curious if you guys would do a podcast on that. And anyways, thank you guys so much for your fabulous podcast. Take care.
All right. Thanks for the voicemail. And I will make sure that one is on the list. I can't say I'm familiar with it. What I will say is we have some amazing listeners up in Calgary.
We do.
Some really good friends also up that way.
Hello, Mike and Gibby. This is Mel from Denver. I am listening to the Howard Elkins story right now, and I had to call and stop in the middle because I am rewatching the Dexter series in preparation for the new season that's coming out. And I just thought it was pretty odd that there really is a barrel girl. You guys keep your own time ticking and have a nice day. Bye.
Yeah, brutal story.
It is.
That Howard Elkins one. I am excited for Dexter. You know that. Dexter was one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
I do need to go back and watch them all. But I don't know when that's coming out. I think it's been pushed back, probably due to COVID or something. I don't know what the date is for the release on that.
Yeah, I know you're excited. I see all the plastic that you bought.
Yeah, I like to put it down in case things go bad between you and me.
Yeah.
During the taping of an episode.
Trying to get me to walk over to that area, but I won't.
just in case. I like to be prepared.
Hi, my name's Michelle, and I am from Lubbock, Texas, and I've just recently started binging your true crime episodes. I listen to the new one, but then I go back and listen to all the old ones, and I just finished your James Rupert podcast, and Gibby is talking about the movie Bernie. I don't know if y'all actually know that that's based on a true crime in Texas where a funeral home director befriended an elderly lady and follows that story pretty closely that Gibby described. Keep up the good work, and I enjoy your podcast. Thanks.
Yeah, so you will probably hear it as you get further on in the episodes, the older episodes.
Yeah.
But we actually did a full Patreon episode.
We did.
On Bernie Tita and the murders and all of that.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Tiffany from Florida. I am a new listener, but I am totally addicted. I listen to you guys all the time. I had actually emailed you a couple weeks ago about a couple of suggestions, and I am catching up still, and I just listened to the episode on H.H. Holmes. What a mysterious guy. I actually called in because there was a show on the History Channel a couple of years ago with his relative who wanted to exhume his body. He had a theory that H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper are the same person. It was a couple of years ago. I don't remember all the details, but if you get a chance to, I highly recommend watching it because some of the connections he made is incredible. Anyways, I love you guys, love your podcast, love the show. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Awesome. Thank you for the voicemail. We actually had a lot of people, Gibbs, reach out to us and ask why we didn't talk about the H.H. Holmes, Jack the Ripper connection. I know a lot of people have theorized that. I don't know if the majority of experts, I'll call them, or people that are really in the know believe that's the case. I think that's kind of why we left it out.
Exactly.
Plus, it was a long episode anyway.
Yeah.
And you can't put everything in. All right, no mailbag this week, but a clarification from last week. Nicole from Australia sent us the big bags of Tim Tams.
Like some Tim Tams.
We love our Tim Tams. The bags, as we noticed, also had animals fornicating.
Yeah,
on it,
I thought it was hilarious.
We got a big kick out of. I didn't say it last week, but,
right.
But there was no note. So I went off the shipping label, which said I still love Australia. So that's who I gave the credit to. Turns out that's the shipping company, I guess.
Oh.
So I got a note from Nicole, but
she's like, no, it was from me.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I guess the note didn't make it into the box, or maybe I threw it away without seeing it.
Yeah, appreciate it though.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. But that's it, buddy, for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
At the turn of the 20th century, rapid industrialization, urbanization, and political corruption were ravaging America. But soon, President Theodore Roosevelt and a diverse group of reformers known as progressives would fight back. Hi, I'm Lindsey Graham, the host of Wondery's podcast, American History Tellers. We take you to the events, times, and people that shaped America and Americans, our values, our struggles, and our dreams. In our latest series, we explore the Progressive Era, which came to be defined by Teddy Roosevelt and others who believed in a strong, active government that worked on behalf of all Americans rather than the privileged few. As the United States entered the 20th century, these progressives hoped to steer the nation in a bold new direction, to launch an era of reform to restore power to the people. Follow American History Tellers on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Experience all episodes ad-free and be the first to binge the newest season only on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Start your free trial today.